the One Star Cowboys podcast. I'm Kevin Turner. We have Saad Youssef. We have Kent Garrison. We will hear from John Machota here in a bit after a Cowboys loss to the Minnesota Vikings, 34-26. And that'll about do it. I'd say that'll probably do it there, Saad. Big takeaways from tonight's game. There's a lot to talk about here. What's the number one thing jumping out at you?
Well, before I get into the game, I just want to say there's been a lot of times where we say like that might about do it, or, you know, they still have a chance, whatever. That actually might do it, because the Cowboys could be mathematically eliminated from the playoffs before they take the field again. If the Eagles beat the Commanders on Saturday, Cowboys game on Sunday is irrelevant in terms of playoff positioning or anything. So this actually was it. But no, man, I mean, the biggest thing for me is just the defense. I mean, I feel like we got kind of taken we got tricked after what they did against Philadelphia. And I know it's a bad offense, and, you know, they've been struggling. And then what they did against Kansas City, I guess in retrospect, looking at Kansas City and how much they've struggled, maybe that wasn't as impressive as we kind of thought it was. I still think that day, my reactions, I kind of stand by them. It was a healthy, good Kansas City squad. But regardless, the defense to me is the biggest story of the game. And then and then offensively, when you know you have this defense, I feel like we've been banging on this drum since at least the Denver game, if not before. You cannot keep settling for field goals. You can't do it. So I think those are the two things. I think the defense and then settling for field goals. Brandon Aubrey had an off day. You don't see him miss a couple of 50-yarders. That's usually, you know, automatic for him. And sure, you can be annoyed at that, but at the end of the day, you have to be setting yourself up better to where you're not settling for field goals nonstop. And last thing, KT, before I turn it over to you, I thought your tweet encapsulated it perfectly. When you are conservative early in the game, you set yourself up to where you are now pressured to go for it in those high leverage situations, and you're the one with your back against the wall, as opposed to getting the other team early on and putting them on their heels. So I think those are the main two things that stood out to me.
Yeah, I mean, plenty of opportunities earlier in the game, 4th and 3s that you could have gone for it and flip a coin. You know, maybe that doesn't go well, and those 3 points are off the board. Whatever, you know, with this defense, that's how you have to play right now. And it is easy to hindsight all this, but the Raiders, Chiefs, and Eagles offenses were all in a tailspin at the time the Cowboys played them. The Cowboys reinforcements were there. And I think we all view the defense as like this unfinished work in progress, right? And I think that's fine. The problem with it being an unfinished work in progress is that gives Eberflus a little bit of an alibi. There was a moment in the first half, and I haven't seen this really all year, and then maybe today was the first time I'm really at least registering this in my head, where they had to take a timeout because the personnel was not right on defense. And the TV cameras got Shoddy going, and Shoddy is obviously pissed because he knows we all abide by the rules of timeouts are for the offense. Timeouts are for game and clock management. That's how it should be. And you could just see him dropping out, what the F are we doing? And, you know, Jerry has made so many comments, about wanting consistency on defense and not loving how many times they've changed defensive coordinator over the last 5 years. And I get that, but you got a lot to think about, because you just let J.J. McCarthy be the most comfortable he's looked all year, and it's not even close. It's the most comfortable he's looked since he was at Michigan. And it's not even close. And we've said this about Russell Wilson. We've said this about Jacoby Brissett, on and on and on and on and on and on. Again, no pressure, not dialing up anything, a lot of pitch and catch, do what you want to do. And yeah, it's on the players too, but this is a bigger issue going into the offseason than maybe they want us to believe.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I'll hit on both of those points. One, it is on the players, because when you have a cornerback who is your number one corner who you just paid, and he's getting beat by Jalen Naylor in the end zone. I mean, he's right there in coverage. He doesn't turn around. And Deron Bland, ever since the Marvin Harrison game against the Cardinals, he rebounded well, but that was against the Raiders, man. Like, I mean, the Eagles just put on a clinic against the Raiders offensively with their offense being as bad as they were. So, yeah, it is on the players, but yeah, the excuses have kind of run out at this point for Matt Eberflus. We kind of talked about it at the beginning of the season, the situation with Micah being traded late and all the changes that were happening. This is now a few weeks that you've had the full supplement of players. You've had Jadeveon Clowney. I know he missed a couple games there with injury, but I just mean on the roster, you've had Clowney, you've had Overshown come back, you've had all these guys, Quinnen Williams, and you still have been underachieving. And the other thing with Eberflus, I don't want to hear that hiring Eberflus really was that big of a mistake, because if you look at the consensus, I think most people are happy with the Eberflus hire beyond it being a Cowboys internal, like, somebody they know. This was a former defensive coordinator who was good as a defensive coordinator coming off a head coaching gig that didn't go well. I think most people, when the Cowboys hired Matt Eberflus, were like, yeah, that's fine. He's fine as a defensive coordinator. You don't have to second guess that. But now we're at a point where you have every right to examine how good this is going to be and how good the Cowboys can be next year on defense with Matt Eberflus.
And you know what? I'll say it. I'll hindsight this one as well. I think it's very weird that you interview Robert Saleh. Okay, you interview him for the head coaching vacancy at the time, and then you realize, oh no, that was just to go ahead and hit the check mark on the Rooney Rule right there. And whatever, the 49ers are probably the team in the NFL, I'd say, that everyone's kind of slept on. They've had an easy schedule. They've been very impressive in the NFC. And again, they beat the Titans today. Who cares? But like, that was one for me, or it's easy for me to go, well, you could have had like,
well, KT,
it's not,
the only pushback that I would have to that is the Cowboys, I understand what you're saying from the Rooney Rule standpoint, and they were just trying to fulfill that. Robert Saleh was never coming here as a defensive coordinator. That was just not going to happen. He may have come here if you tried to hire him as the head coach, and maybe you have Schottenheimer running the offense and you have Robert Saleh as head coach in defense. If that's the sell, that's fine. But Robert Saleh, if he was going to be a defensive coordinator, I really don't think there was a second destination. So that's the only thing I would say to the Saleh thing in particular.
You're right. I was just taking a minute there because I'm a little pissed. Like, I don't like, it's not fun for me. The season's like, there's no playoffs here. 3 weeks to go here. Like, that's not fun at all. It's a real bummer. I would say Javonte Williams was good. They ran the ball really well. I thought the center and the guards were really good tonight. And we're going to end up at 15 carries, 91 yards, averaging 6 yards a pop. He got hurt. They didn't really do much with Malik Davis in the game running the ball, but Javonte Williams looked really good running the ball, and I thought they blocked it up really well. The injuries to Guyton and then to Nate Thomas ended up being a problem, and obviously Minnesota's dialing up blitz after blitz after blitz.
Yeah, you're right, and that's why it actually surprised me. If you look at it in total at the end of the night, they had essentially 23. 15 plus 8. What's 15 plus 8? That's 23. Yeah, that's 23 carries between Malik Davis and Javonte Williams. They're running backs, and they had a few to Hunter Lipke and Brandon Aubrey and Dak and Cavante, but they had 23 carries total in the game, and it was a one possession game the entire game until the end. I'm with you. They ran the ball really well. Also, that shouldn't be a surprise. The Minnesota Vikings, by yards, had the third worst run defense coming in. They had the 10th worst run defense coming into the game, and they had the third best pass defense. Why is Dak throwing it 38 times? Why are you not running it more? I think situational running is something that the Cowboys really struggled with today as well. Just a lot of times where you're looking at it, and, the 2nd and 10 run is a beating. And, having those kind of runs where you're just like, if you're running the way that the Cowboys do, you're thinking that they're in 4-down territory, but they're not. And so that's the thing. I think you're right. They did run the ball really well, especially in between the inside. I'm just surprised they didn't do that more. I'm surprised they didn't do that more, especially draws to kind of, take the pressure off the tackles a little bit and get those edge rushers for the Vikings not cheating all the time. And also screen passes. There were a couple screen passes that were killed, but there wasn't enough to really slow down that pass rush when your tackles are struggling the way that they were. So that was it was not. I don't think it was Schottenheimer's best game as an offensive play caller.
I don't either, but we've seen, I'm not making any excuses for Shoddy because I think we kind of came out of the gate kind of talking about some decisions we had problems with. I will say Brian Force has done this to a lot of offensive coordinators. I've seen him do this to Matt LaFleur a million times in Green Bay. He's given Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson troubles in Detroit over the years. Like, this is not some, but it's just with this offense, knowing what you have, and then you turn it over and go, well, the defense gave up 34 points to the Vikings and got a turnover too. The Quinnen Williams interception, which, he will check in on his injury and probably get an update on that, later in the week and all that stuff. But to give up 34 points to this Minnesota team is just not, there's too many games in the, this year, if you watch Minnesota at all, where it's just like, this is an incompetent offense. And they're not going to win a lot of games this year. And to go give up 34 points to them is embarrassing. This is something we were kind of talking about. They are really going to have to decide. Clearly there's players who aren't going to be here. Trayvon Diggs is one of them, right? There's that's a name that's a spicy topic to talk about or whatever. Clearly there are guys who are, but there are some players who they are going to have to discuss. We'll have weeks to discuss all this stuff. But I'm sitting there looking at the secondary and key moments of big games in the Detroit game and the Minnesota game. We got Marquise Bell getting beaten coverage. And it's well, how is that even an option? That could not be an option. And we know this. How is that not being conveyed? And it's not that we don't, well, it is to an extent that we don't have enough bodies, but Marquise Bell can't be in the game for that to be an option. It's upsetting that part of it, because it keeps happening again and again and again with very, very little pressure on the opposing quarterback.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, if I make a cross-sport comparison, to the Mavericks when they went to the conference finals with Luka and they lost to the Warriors the year before. I think they went to the NBA finals, or 2 years before, whatever that was. Now, I remember that year in the playoffs, everyone kept talking about Maxi Kleber has to come back from this injury. And the whole thought the whole time was, if you're pining for Maxi Kleber and your hopes ride on him coming back from an injury, you're in a bad spot. Yeah. And so I'm with you. If you're hoping that if you find yourself at the end saying, well, Marquise Bell can't get beat by Jamison Williams, if he's in a position where he's on Jamison Williams, that tells you more than anything else. And yeah, I do think it's a bodies problem right now. John would know better. And maybe this is a conversation we have during the week about Trayvon Diggs. My personal opinion, no sourcing, no reporting on this or anything. I think the Cowboys are hesitant to put him back out there because they know they're going to cut him. And if he gets hurt, that could complicate things. This is the same reason why Russell Wilson got benched last year by the Steelers, because you can't put a player out there that you're going to cut and then him get hurt. And all of a sudden that put a wrench in your plans. That's just my opinion. I don't see any other reason why he gets cleared. He talks to the media this week in the locker room. He says he's ready to go, and he doesn't play when this is what you're putting out there at corner. So for me, I think that's the only explanation I have. We'll see if John knows more or something from inside the locker room, but that's just my hunch on why Trayvon isn't playing.
No, and then that's the logical take. And moving forward, it doesn't make sense to play Trayvon Diggs at all. I was thinking maybe a night like tonight does. I mean, but now we're evaluating Ravel. We're evaluating Carson. We're watching those guys and seeing who is going to be here next year and things like that. But when you're in must-win games to stay alive and things like that, I will say and I understand the idea that, one bad Trayvon Diggs play and the negative body language and all that. I get all that. I'm just saying, you paid a guy and then you chose to not try to make it work this year. Hey, and he did things on his end too, but they also, from the beginning, chose to not make it work with him going into this year. And that's petty, and that's getting mad with your money. And I think this is a 50-50 blame. Although if we were to say it to our podcast listeners or Cowboys fans in general, they would put 95% of the blame on Trayvon Diggs. And that's fine. I'm just not falling for that Jerry Jones family crap anymore. Like, that's not how you handle your investment, by running them over on day one of the season. Like, that's just not how you do it. And then Trayvon did his own things that are not okay. Not absolving that. Two things can be true here. And I kind of wish more Cowboys fans would see that, but actually doesn't affect me how they see things at all, to be honest.
No, I agree with you on that. There's blame on both sides. And the only thing that I would say for anybody that says, like, you know, the Cowboys coaching staff or even front office kind of has it out for Trayvon, I don't believe that necessarily, because I've been around Trayvon Diggs for years. And, you know, when you talk about culture and attitude and stuff like that, there's a price to where, you know, you tolerate certain things. And there are things about Trayvon Diggs. I'm not saying because I know this, but I'm telling you just based on the context clues of this season, there are things that we may never know about how bad it got behind the scenes. A star cornerback who just mysteriously had a concussion at home and self-reported that. I'm not saying he should have played through a concussion or anything to that extent, the way T. Higgins or someone did, but I'm just saying that is the natural inclination that athletes usually have. They try to, and it's usually the team that has to hold them down. But there are things to Trayvon's story this season where it makes me, you know, I can't go all on the Cowboys, but I'm also with you. I'm not going 95% on Trayvon. I may go 95% on Trayvon since the whole weird, mysterious concussion.
Yeah.
I think I'm 95%, but I'm with you when you say, like, you know, how they treated him in the off season, in OTAs, and in training camp. And not because they mistreated him. They technically just upheld the rules of the contract and all that stuff. But like you said, you have that much invested, you try to find a way to make it work. And that's where I do agree with you. I think they could have maybe handled things differently in the off season and in training camp. But these last few weeks, man, I'm way more skeptical of what's happening with Trayvon than the other way around.
No doubt. And I don't want to spend any more time on this, but I have one thing I want to say. It's like their language from the beginning too. Like, you know, we need leadership. If you're going to pay someone that much, we need leadership. Well, you chose to pay Trayvon Diggs, and you know that he's not some loud leader, that he's not like very like that's not like what he was, and you should have known that. So like to change the language on all that, what you're doing there, because it benefited your Micah negotiations. Very weird. Weird day in the NFL. Micah torn ACL. Patrick Mahomes torn ACL. We find out that the Chiefs are not making the playoffs as well. So yeah, it's been a weird one, and then the Cowboys season to end, just kind of gloomy thing, man. Brandon Aubrey, I'm not going to mention much of him. The fake field goal was really cool. But you know, I don't know what to say on that. Like, you know, missed a couple field goals. That's not going to happen very often with him. It happened. This is all on the defense, as it is. It's all on the defense, and we've said this way too many times this year. So that's all you're going to get from me out of this. I don't know if there's anything else that you're dying to get off your chest here about tonight's game.
Yeah, just one thing. Of course, it was Aaron Jones again. Not that he had like some big spectacular game like he did in that Green Bay playoff win, but just the fact that he was the one that was the running back at the end of the game that was whatchamacallit, just, you know, converting the fourth down and on the field, kind of celebrating that. And he was the one that kind of put the dagger in not just the Cowboys lost tonight, but really the Cowboys season. Just funny 2023 parallels where you had a bad Cardinals loss against the backup quarterback where you're like, what the hell? You have the Eagles struggling late in the season, and then Aaron Jones is putting you away for the offseason. Very different circumstances for all of those things. But yeah, just Aaron Jones, of course.
Yeah, no, it would be. We'll catch up a little bit later in the week. Sod, make sure everyone checks out Sod's work over at The Athletic, doing great work over there. And Sod, we really appreciate your time. Thank you very much. We will also hear from Father John Machota here in a second. I want to remind you, we'll have a midweek podcast. Kind of doing one Tuesday or Wednesday, usually during the week right now. So kind of getting our schedule aligned because we're doing video in the middle of the week over at the Haymaker Network. So follow them on YouTube if you would, as well, the Haymaker Network. And you can get our podcast wherever you're getting it. Spotify, Apple, whatever you like to do. For Saad Youssef, for Kent Garrison, I'm Kevin Turner. Let's go ahead and hear the hot thoughts from our guy, Father John Machota, right here on the One Star Cowboys podcast.
Nothing was very good for the Cowboys Sunday night against the Vikings. Somehow Brandon Aubrey missed 2 kicks at AT&T Stadium. It's about as unheard of as it gets. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, the rest of the offense, nowhere near as good as I thought they would be, especially coming back home. I just thought that they would have a bounce-back game from what we saw in Detroit. But all of that takes a backseat. And this might sound like a broken record, but for me, it comes back to this defense. I get it. We knew it wasn't going to be great this year. But these last 2 games, it has reverted back to the defense we've seen earlier in the year prior to getting DeMarvion Overshown back and prior to the trade for Quinnen Williams. And that's just a bad sign to me. It's hard to look past that. And obviously the personnel has to improve. And I do think having 2 first-round picks will help a lot in that area. But I think you absolutely have to look at Matt Eberflus, the defensive coordinator. He's not getting the job done. And I think for me, one of the more alarming parts of it is how bad the defenses look, particularly against NFC North teams, which obviously Matt Eberflus was the coach of the Chicago Bears the previous 3 seasons. So that should be the opponents he knows the best. And the Cowboys just have not played well in any of those 4 games, whether it's against the Bears, Lions, Packers, or then Sunday night against the Vikings. And I guess for me, the thing I go back to is I don't even know if the entire picture doesn't look great. The stats don't look great. There's still way too many big plays being made on the back end. There's not enough pressure on the quarterback, not enough blitzing. But then the other thing I keep coming back to is how many individual defenders do you even feel like are having a good year or having a good year for them, a really breakout type standout year for them. And there's not many. And so in the post-game interview, when Jerry was done in front of the cameras, I walked off with him and asked him about Matt Eberflus and how I know Jerry really wants to keep continuity with his defensive coordinator, because if he moved on from Matt Eberflus, that would be his 4th defensive coordinator in the last 4 years. And obviously when they had success, those 3 consecutive years under Mike McCarthy, when they won 12 games and went to the playoffs 3 years in a row, every single one of those years, they had Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator. So I get why he wants continuity, but at the same time, is there also an evaluation process? Is he happy with Matt Eberflus? And in a roundabout way, basically what Jerry said was that the evaluation is going to continue over these final 3 games. And so that's not the tone Jerry was saying about Matt Eberflus earlier in the year when things weren't going well. And so that just shows you that even Jerry is having some thoughts about this. And clearly, after these last 2 losses, Jerry's not very happy. He did not think that would happen. He thought that it would come down to the final week for the Cowboys, that they had a legitimate chance in that final week to make the playoffs. And obviously that's pretty much out the door now. I know there's still a slight chance, but it's under 5%. And so I think that ultimately that there is too much on the line next season with what they've invested on offense. I still believe they're going to find a way to bring George Pickens back, whether it be signing him long-term or the franchise tag. But even on defense, with Quinnen Williams making some of the moves that they made, I just think there's going to be too much invested for Jerry to stick with Eberflus if he doesn't think for certain that they can have a really big year next year. If he has any hesitation about that, I think they go out and they get whoever is the top defensive coordinator candidate from another team, or a defensive coach who's a head coach right now that might get fired. I just think there's too much going to be riding on it for Jerry going into the offseason with everything that they have invested and what he thinks that team is capable of for them to just kind of, I guess, run it back, you'd say. I just, watching that game, I think it all depends on what you think of J.J. McCarthy, and I don't know how close everybody has followed him, but this hasn't been a good year for J.J. McCarthy. A couple of weeks ago, he was looked at as a guy that I don't even know if they felt like he would be their future franchise quarterback, and just a year ago, they used the 10th overall pick on him. It hasn't been a good year for him. He because of injury, he didn't play what would have been his real rookie year, so this is technically his rookie year, and it hasn't been very good. He had a career-high passing yards, which is 250, which, isn't crazy, but still way above what he has been doing. The first half was the most first-half passing yards he had. I think it was right around 150. And, he had the interception, but he made some good throws. He never looked uncomfortable. Obviously had the run play there where everybody on the Cowboys defense sold out on the goal line to stop the run. But no one accounted for J.J. McCarthy just kind of slowly coming around the one side, nobody even near him, and he grittied into the end zone like he's a superstar, and that's on your watch. You let that happen. I'm all for making excuses and being able to see, maybe there are better days ahead if that's happening and you're going against Matthew Stafford or Drake May or Josh Allen or whatever, but you're going to let J.J. McCarthy look like that? That was just a really bad sign, especially at AT&T Stadium, where it's really not a crowd noise thing for your offense. You've played great at AT&T Stadium, and your issues have mostly been on the road. Plus, having the bad taste of the way the Lions game went, I just really thought there'd be a bounce-back performance, and there really wasn't from anyone. And that's why I'm saying it's not just on the defense. The offense certainly didn't do its job. The special teams didn't do its job, but when I watch that game, it makes me think beyond this year, and it makes me think going into next year. I don't know how, even if you told me that they used one of the first-round picks on a defensive end and let's say the other one on a linebacker or a DB, with the way the team's being coached right now in defense, I don't know how confident I would be that it would be massively improved next year. So maybe these next 3 games, some things change, and we see some things that, hey, maybe adjustments were made and there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. But it was hard for me to watch the way that this game ended and didn't think that there aren't going to be some notable changes on defense in the offseason. And the way things look right now, one of those changes has a chance to be their defensive coordinator.
I don't have time to have a bad time. It ain't on my schedule.